Hello, Yes, But Why listeners. This is your host, Amy Jordan. Thank you for joining me. I've taken a much-needed hiatus over the holidays, and now I should be back to providing you new interviews every other week. Very exciting. Welcome to this episode, Yes, But Why, episode 330, my chat with improv performer and coach, Karla Dingle. But first, let's talk about Audible. Yes, But Why podcast is sponsored by Audible. Go to audibletrial.com/yesbutwhy to get your account today. Audible is a great resource for new books, podcasts, other cool audio content. Need a break from your everyday grind? Want to check out something new? Listen to a book on Audible. Audible has hundreds of titles and shows to choose from, all included in your membership. Go now to audibletrial.com/yesbutwhy to sign up for your account today. So let's get to my guest for this week. In this episode of Yes, But Why, I had the absolute pleasure of chatting with Queen City Improv's Karla Dingle. We chatted about how she has been at the epicenter of the online improv world for the past few years, how that all started, and what it was like for her to connect with the international improv community. I now present to you Yes, But Why, episode 330. Karla Dingle really knows how to bring people together. Enjoy. I'm Amy Jordan, and this is
Yes, But Why?
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 This is the Yes, But Why podcast.
All right, great. So the question that I like to start with, Karla, is what is the way that you played as a child with your siblings or friends? What games were you playing?
Yeah, so I guess I was like a typical child of the 70s, where you went out, your parents threw you out the front door and said, come back for dinner. And then they threw you back out after dinner and said, don't come back till it's dark. And we just sort of entertained ourselves with hide and seek, and we would, kick a can and play ball in the cul-de-sac, just sit around and talk and tell ghost stories and things like that. So for me, it was just very community focused. Like it was all the kids my age were together, and then the kids that were older were together, and the kids that were younger were together, and we just sort of grabbed our spot in the neighborhood. And we just sort of hung out and created all sorts of worlds and games and experiences for ourselves. And I can't remember any specific things that we created other than just sort of those typical things that you do.
Sure. When you were playing, who was it that you were playing with? Was it like other kids from houses next door? Do you have many siblings?
I have 3 siblings, and I didn't really play too much with my siblings. So my sister is almost 6 years older, then my brother's 4 years older, and then my other sister is 4 years younger. So there was a good enough spread. That's really the only time I started hanging out with any of my siblings is I was in the south of the United States, and back then in the 70s, high school started in 8th grade and went to 12th grade. So when I was in 8th grade, my brother was a junior in high school, and so we started having some mutual friends, and we would hang out, but he hated having me around. Go away, younger sister, you're not cool, all that good stuff. But otherwise, it was just the kids in the neighborhood. And not all the kids in the neighborhood my age. I've never been the cool kid. I was probably always in the misfit group. That's what I'm going to call it, me and my misfits, where maybe we were a little different, a little weirder, a little more creative. Life wasn't all about being the most popular or the most beautiful or what clothes you had. That just wasn't things that registered for us. It was just, having fun and entertaining ourselves.
Oh, yeah, for real. Definitely. I had some odd group of kids I hung out with as well. We like to choreograph dances. And I remember people coming over and being like, "What are you guys doing?" And we're like, "We're putting on a show." And they're like, "What?" We're like, "This is the stage. Can't you see it? Get off the stage."
Yeah, we didn't do quite as much of that. And partially, I think it's because at a really young age, I think 5.5, 6, my mom put me into like theater stuff. So I've been doing theater since that age. So I've been dancing, singing, acting since as long as I can remember. And I had that group of friends that didn't all live in my neighborhood. And then I had my neighborhood friends. Now, there was a little overlap. There were 2 families that overlapped. But it was sort of like, I feel like it's always been that way my whole life. I have like my theater friends, and then I have my other friends, and my other friends do not get my theater friends. And then there's some little overlap in between, some commonality and some threads of folks that hit both groups. But theater people are some of my favorite people in the world. But I get that not everybody gets us. So
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And you always certainly find yourself in other circles, you know, whether it's like high school or, you know, later when you have like a job and you're like, "Oh, well, it's all my friends who work together at the Gap." And then like, you know, like that kind of thing. Yeah. Different groups. Now, like I was telling you earlier, I always think of my own journey in like scenes, like communities, where it's like, oh, that crowd and that crowd, like different situations like that. Some of them happened concurrently, but I didn't think of it that way. It was still like each crowd had their own like vibe. And like we did our own things and learned from one another. Did you live in the same neighborhood like growing up the whole time? Like did you and your neighborhood friends stay friends all the way?
In the same neighborhood from when I was 5 to 14. So like those formative years, it was like the same crew. I did my theater as well, all of that time. So a lot of continuity. And then when the summer before I was turning 15, my father relocated me from Atlanta, Georgia, to Connecticut, to a little town called Trumbull, Connecticut, which is the tiniest town, only known for a World Championship Series baseball team, a little league team, where fast food restaurants are illegal. And the town is so small. There's 1 high school, 1 middle school, and that was it. And I came from Atlanta, and it was like the ultimate culture shock.
Wow.
I was brutally bullied for my Southern accent, which was so very thick, that I immediately started like doing everything I could to sort of get rid of my accent. But it's very funny when I talk to people from the South, it just starts coming back right now. And it was like thick Southern drawl, like, "Yes, ma'am, I do that." So yeah, it was a very big difference. And then whole new world, a whole new group of friends, and how to figure that out. And there weren't the opportunities like I had down here to really like have that year-round, everyday sort of theater experience. So I got involved in a summer theater program called the Trumbull Youth Association. And it went from like 15 to 21. And I've always sort of been like a big character. I guess that's the best way to describe myself. I'm never the leading role. I'm always the funny sidekick or the old obnoxious woman. So the younger kids typically didn't get lead roles, and I came in and I auditioned, and in my first couple of summers, I got lead roles. And so I was much younger, hanging out with much older people, and that was a weird thing. Like, I feel like I probably spent my entire youth, from the time that I was like, back from what I can remember till I was like 19 or 20, like playing a different version of myself to fit in with whatever group of friends I was with. And I don't really know that a lot of people got to see an authentic side of me. And I don't even know if I at some point even knew what the authentic side of me was. Because I feel like maybe I was acting even in my personal life, to feel like I belonged. So.
Wow. I feel like that time, 15 to 21, though, I mean, you might as well try on every mask. Yeah. Like, who knows who you are? You're like trying to figure it out. Even I love the idea that you had this consistent interest in theater, like that maintained, I thought you were going to say that when you moved to Connecticut, you were going to be like, and then I didn't do theater again until college or something like that,
No,
but it's so great because that was like clearly part of you. And I love this idea that you've said about like the way that we are not being our authentic selves in some scenarios. But I mean, I feel like there's so many different scenes. I mean, in high school, you're just trying to figure out like, is this the one? Is this who I want to be? Is this the way, I don't know. It seems very, no matter what, I feel like everything in high school is forgivable. You're like, I don't think anyone saw my authentic self. I was like, it's okay.
You could tell my mother that everything I did in high school was forgivable. I'd appreciate it.
For sure. I'd be happy to. Remind me of this in a few years when I have my own teen. I'll be calling you in 10 years like, remind me, Karla, remind me. You'd be like, it's all forgivable. And I'm like,
I think my mother and father would probably tell you that I was so miserable when I moved that if I didn't have theater, my mother said she at points maybe feared for my safety because it was such a hard transition. And I only mostly had it during the summer. And she's like, you could just see your personality change through the year as the summer got closer and closer. And then like this onset of depression in September and October as I realized, summer's over, back to school. So, it gave me something to look forward to, and it gave me that outlet. I always say I've been acting my whole life because I love to be people who aren't me. And that's one of my favorite things, is to be a different character on stage and just escape whatever reality I'm in at the moment.
Yeah, that's fun. And also I find, very creative, this idea of exploring different perspectives, I also find that it like helps people understand a wider view of the world, right? Because they're allowing themselves to think, what would this person think? Why would they be like this? And it helps you to be open more to the world around you.
Yeah, and I look back at that time as an adult, like obviously with a different understanding and a different viewpoint of what was happening at the time. And then in my life today, I have the fortune of working with like 35 kids every week, some of who have been with me for 5+ years, ages 9 to 20, who do improv, and just sort of watching them sort of have some of these same experiences and them coming in one year and being completely different human than they were the year before, and just sort of watching them explore pieces of themselves on the stage and our space that feels safe, that I know that they couldn't explore outside those doors, whether it be gender identity or sexuality or just an interest in a video game and you don't want to talk about it because you might be nerdy, just those big things about life. I mean, I cannot imagine being a teenager in today's world where there's the social media and everything's recorded and there's no escaping any of the terrible mistakes that you make. Mine are not recorded, and I am so thankful for all of that. There's some photographs, but that's about it. It's a whole different thing then.
Oh my God. I think of how many terrible haircuts. I had a bowl cut and a perm. Like for a while. I had a perm,
a teased perm too. So my bangs were like 4 inches tall.
Yeah, that's stuff. Good. Me too. Yeah, for real. Definitely. And I'm glad no one knows where those photos are. Yeah, in fact, I have them in the closet behind me. No one will ever see them. That's the beauty of it, right?
Yeah, and the kids today just don't have that fortune, right? Everything is out there forever.
Who knows? Well, everyone says forever, and then I'm like, it wasn't when I was a kid, so who knows what'll happen by the time I'm old. Maybe it'll be like, we don't have the internet anymore. Remember that internet? Remember when we had internet?
That is true. That is true.
I'm like, hey man, could go away as quickly as it came. We didn't know. And then all of a sudden it was there. And then it could just be exactly the same on the way out. Like, wait, what? Where is it? I don't know. No one knows. This phone number won't work. Whatever. It's a wild situation, the idea of being a kid. And I'm so glad that those kids have you to hang out with as a sounding board, and just to have that stage where it like feels safe. And it just seems like wonderful that you're creating this space for them. When you made the kids program, was it like, is it like any ages in a group? Because you said like 9 to 20. Is it like various levels? Doesn't matter what age?
Yeah, so I inherited the program when I started working at the studio. It's called Acting Out Studio. It's in Charlotte and part of South Carolina, because we're right on the line. So I coach 6 improv teams, so the advanced improv students. So they'll take a regular improv class. Our classes for our improv program are ages 9 to 12, and then teen, and then we have an adult program. And so I have 4 youth teams, one that is 9 to 12 years old. I have 2 teenage teams, and those range anywhere from 13 to 18. And then I have a young adult team that is the folks that have been around with me the longest, and they're 15 to 20. I used to be 15 to 18, but they won't go away. So I just keep extending the age. I'm like, but when you get 21, I can't keep you here. And it's funny because my young adult team did a show this weekend with my adult team, and I have 2 of them that are turning 20, and I was like, so that's the next step. And they're like, yeah, but we got 1 more year though, right? And I was like, yes, the adult team is the next step where we're trying to get, but we have 1 more year with this team, right? I'm like, yeah, it's fine. It's fine. And it is, thank you for saying it's a wonderful environment that I provide. And that's something that's really important to me, is about the spaces that we provide, not just for children, but for ourselves as improvisers. But I think, as much as it feels like a great space that I'm offering them, they give me so much back. They teach me more, just about life and about acceptance. And it's just sort of boggles the mind. I grew up in a musical theater environment, so I grew up in a community where there were folks that were openly gay when being openly gay was not something people did. And so to sort of see that reflected today with kids that are transgender or non-binary, and like seeing them have that similar journey where they walk into these spaces and it's completely okay, and they're not judged, and they're just accepted for who they are, and they play whatever they want to play on stage and explore those aspects of themselves. And I take so much from that, that I feel like I'm constantly learning. Plus, they keep me hip on the lingo, and the popular artists, and the bands. I don't even know what you call things anymore. Who I should be listening to and what I should be watching. So they keep me from looking like the senior citizen that I am. So
every time I teach the comedy camp, I ask them to tell me like what their favorite comedy is. I'm like, what thing do you watch? And so many of them name YouTube artists, and I just write it down and then like look it up, and I'm like, what is this? And I try my hardest to try, because I'm I don't know about you when you teach, but I'm I understand things in an organized way. Like for me, I watch a sitcom and then I figure out what the blocks of the sitcom are so that I can explain it back to someone. First, this thing happens and then something bad. Now that thing can't happen anymore. They need it to happen though. So there's 1 obstacle. Okay, 2 obstacles. There's another thing that's going to happen. There's a 3rd obstacle, definitely a 3rd obstacle, right? Maybe even you think they're going to get it. Maybe they'll get, nope, 3rd obstacle, definitely going to happen. Things like that. And so when I was first teaching, I would watch television shows and stuff to figure out the pattern, right? And in fact, I think a comedy is good if I can't immediately figure out the pattern.
Yeah.
Like
absolutely.
when I watch television shows.
Surprise me.
Yeah. If I'm taken so by what's happening that I'm not immediately just in my brain, like waiting for the next, shoe to drop, as it were, like, then I'm like, oh, well, that's pretty good. I totally forgot I was watching this. Like, great. But so I watch the kids' stuff to find the pattern so that I can figure out the way they like
how's
comedy.
How's it evolving? Yeah. How's the comedy evolving? Because it's very different, right? We think about the evolution of comedy, just the way we open a classroom these days and talk about boundaries and topics that are, off the table when we play, like, when I started doing improv almost 14 years ago, nothing was off the table. We did accents that were terribly offensive, and we made sexist jokes and all sorts of things, because that's what the comedy culture was. And it's definitely through this generation, the evolution of comedy and, finding the fun in the play versus finding the fun perhaps in the differences or the things that stand out. I think is a huge new pattern that is happening. So recognizing what feels real, something that's really important to me as a teacher as well as a player. I tell my kids, I don't want you to be funny. Don't try to be funny. We're gonna laugh, but don't try to be funny. And they're like, "What's comedy? We're supposed to be funny." I was like, "But when you trying to explain, like when you force the funny, it's not funny. But when we find and explore the funny and we see something in that character that feels real, that we recognize, or like, oh, I know that person, or oh my gosh, that's happened to me. Like that's where I think we've evolved to with our comedy as it is right now, especially from an improv perspective. I can't speak to stand up or sketch because it's not something I'm really actively involved in. I'm sort of on the fringe of some of those things, but so it's interesting to see sort of what they find funny and what they see as a celebrity is really an interesting concept. I'll say, name me a famous celebrity, and in my mind, like names like Tom Cruise and Julia Roberts and Timothée Chalamet come to mind. And you're right, they'll be just rattling off YouTubers or folks on Twitch, and I'm like, I don't even know who these people are, and I go look them up too because I feel like it's my responsibility to continue to educate myself on the current culture, so that I can play within their world and help them shine with the things that are what's important to them.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah, the rhythms and the way that even like TikTok, like taught them how to write a joke fast. I'll tell you what, because it's a shortened thing. You've got these, also taught everyone how to do video editing, apparently. And it's like all sorts of stuff that it's like, people just know how to do this now, like what? Just everyone, they can make this video. I'm watching this thing and I'm like, what? Wow, are there 16 different people in 16 different places singing this same song? What's happening? These ideas of how that works and how they collaborate is changing, and we need to be open to whatever that might mean for them, and how they perceive it and want to use it and translate it into their own art. To your point too, when we were kids, it definitely was, comedy was that of finding what is weird in a bad way, what is other, and pointing it out and all being like, ha ha ha. And now I feel like the through line of almost all comedy is this, hey, this thing, don't we all understand it this same way? Or like, can you believe when this thing happens? And everyone's like, that happens to me too. And everyone just agrees and is connected. Like how many, I'll warrant you that my social media algorithms are skewed a little creative and also optimistic. So maybe this is just what's coming through to me, but like, even memes that come through seem to be like let's be together, or like, let's all, hey, did you know, like my favorite is the today years old things. I was today years old when I realized this. And then the whole thread is just other people agreeing and supporting each other. Like, oh my God, I also didn't know that's what this product was for. Like, I've been using it wrong the whole time. And like everyone admits this like fault of theirs, yet we're bonding over the fact that it's like the guy who made it wanted it to be used this way and we all use it that way. Isn't that insane? Like, whatever, but we're all bonding over our communal connection to a thing.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you see that on stage as well, or on screen if you're teaching online or performing online. It's just those things. And it was so heightened for me during the pandemic when I started working with folks from all over the world. And just the commonality of the things that did line up all over the world, and then the fun of the things that didn't was a little bit as well. Early on in the pandemic, I taught a class, like a drop-in kids class. And I had a young man from Georgia here in the U.S. and then a young man from London, and they were doing a scene. And in the scene, the young boy from the U.S. said that he'd had biscuits for breakfast, and they continued on with the scene. And after the scene stopped, the young boy from London goes, "Does your mother really let you have biscuits for breakfast?" And he's like, "Yeah, I have biscuits all the time." And then it just clicked with me. Biscuits are cookies in England, and biscuits are these big lumps of lard in the U.S. And so I had to break that down and explain them. And then there was this moment where everyone laughed because some people understood that they weren't lined up, and other people were like, "Well, I don't see what's funny." So even the not knowing, there's some commonality, and you're not alone if you don't get the reference when you're playing internationally. We just did I was one of the teams I coached through Queen City Comedy. One of the suggestions was hash, and in the US it's like this can of meat and potatoes. That's what hash is in the US. Well, it is not the same thing all over the world. So that was sort of a fun exploration. Right. And then there was the idea of hash is now also related to drugs. So it was very fun when we debriefed afterwards. What were you talking about? What were you talking about? And as the coach, I'm sitting back watching, knowing that these people are not all talking about the same thing, but it's still working beautiful in their long form as they sort of play with it. And as an audience member, really enjoying just knowing it's not lining up all the same and watching them maneuver through that.
Yeah, wow. You were a pretty big deal during the pandemic for, uniting a lot of international artists. I feel like your work with Queen City Comedy really just took over the online improv for a while. I mean, everybody was talking about it. Everybody was taking the classes. It really was a lot of great connections made over the community. How do you feel about that experience and how it really blew up?
Yeah, well, it all happened by accident. So that's the first thing. It was a total accident. So here in Charlotte, where I'm from, we have several theaters. And during the pandemic, everyone was like, that's it. We're not doing anything online. We're just shutting our doors. And when things open back up, we'll come back out. And so my business partner, Kale Evans, and myself were like, well, let's just do some jams online, some drop-in classes so that people will have a place to come. And I think he hosted the first one, and 14 people came, and 2 of them were from Charlotte, and the rest of them were from all over the world. And he was after his class, I wasn't there, he sends me a note. He's like, this is the weirdest thing just happened. I just had this guy from Tel Aviv and from Manila and Germany, and I was like, what? Are you pulling my leg? He's like, no. And he's like, it's probably just a weird fluke or something. And then I had class the next week, and the same thing happened. And I was like, what is going on? And I had done classes online because I immediately just reached out to the people that I was obsessed with. I was like, are you teaching a class? And I was taking classes online, but I just didn't realize how I don't know what the right wording is. Like, no one knew who we were. Why were people finding us, right? Just an Eventbrite thing that we threw out there, a Facebook event. Like, we didn't do anything special. And then after the third class, we were like, all right, it's pretty cool. So we were like, let's do this. Let's get a group of these people together and make a team. And that was the idea. So we're like, we'll put something out, we'll hold some auditions. And we had over 125 people come to the auditions. And we were like, what is happening? Now, we weren't surprised that they were coming because they did sign up. So as the signups were coming, we had to prepare, and we brought in other people, and we had breakout rooms and plans and all this stuff. And we're like, we're going to pick 10 people? All right. Well, we did not. We ended up with 33 people and 3 improv teams after those auditions. And that's sort of what started us. And then, like I said, I sort of was like stalking people like Neil Curran and Katie Shute and Paul Valancourt. I'm like, are they teaching? And I think Rise Comedy was probably one of the first places that really was pulling in some of these names of people that I wanted to learn from. And I was like, I don't know how much time we're going to have. I need to take every opportunity. I was taking like 45 hours a week of classes. It was crazy. And then I was like, well, why don't we just invite these people to teach for us? And Paul Valancourt was actually the first one who taught from us, and it was so successful. We had to do a second round, and then we're like, well, who else do we want? And I had just taken a class out of the Hideout Theater with Shannon Stott. And I was like, Shannon was so good. Let's have Shannon come teach. And then I would go to another class. And I'm like, they were so good. Let's have them come teach. And so I became the person acquiring the lovely folks to come and share and teach with us. And because those people took a chance on some company that they had never heard of before, and came out and shared their talents with the community, I think that began to sort of really build things. We also at the time reached out to folks and did comedy conversations. We had Colin Mockery come, TJ Jagodowski, Jill Bernard, where they would just come on a Zoom and 20, 25 people would come and just talk about improv. And those are recorded and on YouTube, which is really fun. One of my favorite experiences is we had 2 folks, one from India and one from Manila. And then Neil Curran from Ireland, the 3 of them. They were on our call. We didn't understand time zones then, so it was not friendly for everyone around the world. They were on a call with like Colin Mockery in like the middle of the night. And I remember when it was their turn to ask a question and their face came up on the screen next to Colin Mockery, like just the joy and adulation, and like, it's 4 a.m. and I don't care. I'm going to talk to Colin Mockery about how he inspired me to start improv. Like, I think it's just those experiences that really started to give us, I don't know what the right word is, some awareness out there in the community. And then diversity is also very important to me. It's something personally that's really, really important. So we started some diversity conversations, and then we partnered with Socially Distant Improv, who was doing some anti-racist conversations, partnering with folks from like Huge and Black Improv Alliance, and some other organizations. And so instead of like duplicating efforts, we started just sharing them all on our pages. And then through that, we connected with a few other folks, and we came up with the Everybody Get In Here Festival. And we did 2 of those, one in January of 2021 and one in June of 2021. Yep, years are hard. And just totally. The idea was to highlight all the incredible improv going on all over the globe, to give people a platform. So like Glossip Improv and Highwire Improv, and Improv Comedy Bangalore, and just these great, Will Hines was just getting his school up and running at the time. So all of us sort of coming together and highlighting just improv around the world, because when you're in the US, I don't know, maybe it's just our special circumstances. We just think that there's nothing else out there in the world but what's happening in our little worlds. And the quality of work in the improv community that is just happening across the globe was just mind-blowing in the best possible way for me. And I just wanted to let everyone see it. And so, and and to learn from each other and to play with each other. We ended up having at the height 7 global improv teams. We're back down to 5 now, just through the opening up of the world. So people can't, do both. And we totally get that. And I think the biggest thing moving forward is I right before this podcast, I opened the room for a character improv jam that one of our folks was hosting. And I said, we'll keep doing this as long as people keep showing up. We're going to continue online improv until no one's in the room anymore. And that's sort of a commitment that we have. And I know there's a couple instructors like Jay Suko and Billy Merritt that have said sort of the same thing, that they're dedicated to continuing to teach online because the access is different, I think, for people. If you have to put your kid to bed and then go in the other room, you can do improv. You don't have to hire a sitter and drive uptown or take public transport or a lift. So there's that. The physical access for people with disabilities. There's just a variety of things that this place opens up. And some people don't have a community in their space to play in. So community is such a big... I know it's such a big thing for me. It's always been a big thing for me. We talked about it earlier, feeling like I have a place to belong and a place to play. And the pandemic gifted me with the opportunity to provide those spaces for other people. So yeah, that was the longest answer to a question ever. I'm so sorry.
No, it was a great description and a wonderful understanding from your point of view of, what the experience was for you. I mean, I just saw it from on the outside. I heard about you and heard about the school, and different people that I knew were going to the jams and doing different things. And it was like, this is so great. Oh my God, I love it. And it was really, I would meet 3 people in a row and they'd all mention that they had taken classes or something with you. And it was just like, wow, this is connecting. There's, like I said before, the pandemic really made the improv world feel smaller. Before the pandemic, I had already started doing some international interviews. And at the time, maybe like a year or so before, there definitely was a crowd. There was a handful of maybe 12 improvisers that were always traveling to all the festivals, right? Mm-hmm. So they would do the circuit and you'd see the teacher names would repeat around the places and you're like, oh, okay, this is the scene. And so I started to recognize, and I would try to get, I would read who the teachers were in the festival and, okay, I've interviewed this one. Okay, I haven't interviewed this person. And I would reach out to them. And that's how I would find people. And then when we had the pandemic, I'll say this forever, never was a better Facebook group in the world than Improvisers Talking About Food. Forever and always. Love you. Yeah. That group was my lifeblood for many years. And it was a way to connect with people on a real human level, and yet with the undercurrent of we all have this one same interest, but we're not going to talk about that interest. We're going to talk about something else, which I really enjoy. And from that group would meet little circles of people who would then show me where the new crowd of travelers, and by travelers now, it's not who's going around to festivals, but who's taking all the online courses, or where are the hot spots where it's the who's who of improv are taking classes over here and there, this kind of thing. And I appreciate you even talking about the discussions on diversity and, how to run a community and safe spaces and connecting with different groups from around the country, if only just to have a group conversation about those kinds of things. And even though every community will have to make a decision on how they run their theaters individually and work on that, I feel like the out loud conversations that you and a lot of those other groups had changed the landscape of improv such that it will be harder for, the predatory, quote unquote guru type improv leaders who come in and cause trouble, who cause trouble in many cities all over. And that sort of like, and also the God mentality of the improv teachers that was happening for a while. Now it's such a wide community. Now it's like a team thing. It's like it's great that you took one class with this one person, but do you do this, this, and this? Do you understand these 3 different styles of improv? Not just the one, but these different ways and how they came about. These kinds of things are what are now like held as, oh, wow, that person really is the top of their game. It's not like Amy Poehler. She's famous and also does improv. We like her. It's like cool, I guess. But now, and then the other part is like businesses, like there's how we're running our businesses, both from a community aspect and then also from like legit, just like accounting software on up, where because everyone was talking and everyone was like sharing notes on like, hey, we ran our thing as a nonprofit. What did you guys do? Oh, well, we ran it like this. Like, oh, well, that means your taxes are and people would have these discussions on these groups. And, I learned so much about like how to run a business and amazing.
I think the pandemic was like the great equalizer. That's what I like to call it as far as the improv world. We talk about status when we're doing a scene, right? Who has a higher status and the equal status. And I think as far as like some of the instructors that before the pandemic were so well known, they didn't necessarily like want the status. They were given the status, and then however they handled the status when they got it, that was all on them. But I think now, because we've been in Zoom rooms and we've had conversations, we're humanizing these people, so that high tier doesn't feel so high anymore. And we're realizing that the quality of educators around the world isn't centered in New York, London, LA, and Chicago. It's in, Mumbai, and Manila and Oslo and in Germany and all these other places that we weren't hearing about before. And so I think that's been the best gift that we've given to this community, this global improv community, is to realize the depth of talent out there. And that the pool just keeps getting bigger and bigger, because our job as educators is to share what we love and share what we know in a way that inspires, so that student will be the next one to share what they know and what inspires them. And that's one of the reasons when I bring people on to Queen City to teach, I'm not like, we need a class about physicality. The conversation I have with an instructor is, I want you to teach what you're passionate about. Let us be your incubator space. What have you always wanted to try that you've never had a space to try? Try it here. Because if they're excited and they're passionate, that's going to come across to the students. And that's what we want in an educational space. It's not about, we started off like everyone else, like, let's do some foundations and some scene work classes and teach people improv who hadn't done it before. But really what we've found is our niche or audience, whatever, is people that already know the basics, that want to just keep learning more and more, and just broadening their skill set and their toolbox, as well as broadening their community. I say community too much, but it can't be said enough. I got to go travel abroad for the first time in November, which was really, really exciting. I taught at Improv Fest Ireland, and that was my first international festival that I had taught at. And it was I'm such an introvert. I'm like the worst. I'm in the back corner of a room, and I'm such an observer because I've been an actor my whole life, right? And the training for an actor is observe. Watch their mannerisms, watch their characteristics, see what they're thinking, replicate that in a character when you're on stage. So that's been my whole life just hammered into my little brain. So I'm sitting in this room, And a lot of people had no idea who I was, which was wonderful on so many aspects because there was this anonymity and I could watch these people reconnecting. So the folks from like Camp Utopia that haven't seen each other in a couple of years because the camps were closed, you could just see them like just flocking towards each other in a space. And then the people that had met through classes, you could see them flocking together in a space. And the people that had met at festivals several years ago and were now back in person, like it was so important. It almost reminded me of that scene from Love Actually, when they're just shooting the people in the airports reuniting. It sort of reminded me of those moments of just pure love and joy and connection. And then I was like, oh, I need to do the same thing. There are the people I know that I've met online that I can meet in person, like Chris Mead and Neil Curran. And then there were 6 of our global team members in Ireland from like Malta and England and the US. And so we got to meet in person. And then so many of the folks that had taught for us or I'd taken classes with. So it just is amazing what a gift this has been for community and the evolution of this art form.
You do say community a lot, but I believe in what you're talking about. And also, I feel like we've used it in various different ways. So it's, you know, I mean, just because we're using the word, but I'm going to dig deeper into it, which is it seems to be creating communities seems to be something that drives you. Is this something that you were aware of? Like, have you always thought about how you wanted to build a community? Or because you mentioned that all of the success you had with your online improv stuff was just like happenstance. Like, oh my God, it just happened. It was a ball, you know, it was a snowball rolling downhill and all of a sudden it's huge. Like, but was there a part of you that like, that is what you wanted? And so you're sort of drew it to yourself. Do you want that now? Is that what drives you moving forward?
Yeah, so I think it's probably always been sort of in my DNA, for lack of a better word. Queen City Comedy started about 6 years ago here in Charlotte, and the idea was that it was a collective, and the first thing they did was host a comedy experience where they brought different improv teams together, different stand-up comedians together, because in our world, the theaters were separate, the stand-up was separate from improv, and the sketch was separate from improv and separate from stand-up, and so there was all this incredible comedy happening, and nobody knew what anybody else was doing. So that was sort of where we came from. And that was sort of the intent from day one was let's bring it all together and sort of let everyone know the incredible talent that's out there and really sort of build on each other and, you know, sharing spaces, sharing, you know, skills and secrets and best practices, whatever words you want to use. So that's sort of where Queen City Comedy came from. And I came from my partner, Cale Evans, and our other co-founder, Elizabeth Byland. And then about 6 weeks after they had that conversation, they sort of were like, hello, Karla, would you like to help us plan a festival in like 10 weeks? I was like, what? And we did it. And so that's sort of where it became, where we started. And then at that, it was a tiny little festival. These 3 little spaces actually in the studio that I work at, our big Broadway theater house, one of the folks from there came, and they were like, we did not know this existed. And they became our partner at that point, giving us these large venues and these large spaces. We started doing monthly shows where we would invite different people in from different pieces of our city to perform. And that turned into a festival called the Queen City Comedy Experience, which we've been doing here in town. And so I think that's sort of where we came from as far as Queen City. For me, I spent 25 years in retail, in what I'll call specialty experience retail. So I worked for Build-A-Bear Workshop for 10 years. I worked for American Girl Doll for 5 or 6 years. At American Girl Doll, my title was the experience manager. So it's all about creating that atmosphere, that environment that people feel welcome in. And when you're running a team and you want them to enjoy their work and to be productive and to make it a fun, peaceful environment, you sort of have to, you have to model some of the behaviors. You have to sort of set forth those expectations, and then just sort of allow folks to find their way. And so I think it's just something I've been doing for a very long time. And I think it all goes back to that 15-year-old girl who moved to Connecticut and didn't feel like she had a space that she belonged in, except for 2.5 months out of the year. So yeah, I guess look at me getting all emotional now. I guess that's where it all goes back to. But no, it is the most important piece. It's why I do improv. I think for the first couple of years I did improv because I missed the reaction of an audience. I graduated college and went to school for theater and got married and had a kid and spent, 13, 14 years without being on a stage. And then when my kid was sort of old enough to feed and take care of himself, he was like 10, we took a vacation and we were on a cruise ship, and Second City Touring Company was on the cruise ship.
Oh my God.
And because I work retail, I couldn't go back to scripted work because I couldn't do that sort of a rehearsal schedule or take that many weekends off. So I was turning 40. I was having a midlife crisis. My kid was getting older. He was at the stage of, "Ooh, Mom, you're gross." And we're on this boat. And on the first night, we see this improv comedy show, and everything shifted in my being at that moment. And I was like, what is this? Like, what is this? And then I think I saw every show, like the kids shows, the regular shows, the dirty night shows. I think I saw all of them on the boat. And so I told my husband when we got home, if there was improv comedy in Charlotte, that I would give it a go. And so I got home and I looked it up, and there was a theater called Charlotte Comedy Theater. And I signed up. The class started like 3 weeks later. I went to my first class and freaked out and hid in the bathroom during the break and didn't want to come out. And I waited like 30 minutes. And when I came out, this guy was like in the hallway and he's like, "Oh, we were looking for you. Come on back in." And I did. And I've been doing improv. It'll be 14 years in like 3 weeks. So.
Oh my goodness, man. I have heard of people going on I've heard of people doing the Second City cruises, but I've never heard of a person who saw it.
I was in the audience.
I love it. Oh man, it got you. It won.
It did.
Yes.
And it's funny now, as these connections are happening through the pandemic, I've met, 5 or 10 people. They were like, "Well, I was on those cruise ships. What year? What boat?" And none of them have lined up, but we've been awful close a couple of times. But when we talk about community, if that young man had not been out there looking for me, I don't know if he was looking for me or told me that he was looking for me, right? Took that time to make me feel wanted and needed, then I wouldn't be here today. So I like to give that. I want to always give that back.
Yeah. that vibe is 100% what I've enjoyed about improv, what I've enjoyed about the building of communities, teaching of classes. Like my primary teaching has been 101, and the idea of having the brand new students come in. And my favorite thing is telling them, "You're exactly in the right place. This was meant for you. This is where you're supposed to be. I'm glad you got here." Because it's really, at the end of the day, I mean, in the larger sense of it, I'm all for the world takes you on an adventure. And if you happen to be in a place where you can learn something new, learn it, Yeah. And my job was always just to be like, "Don't worry, you're going to learn it, and we're all going to be safe, and I'll take care of you, and you can do this." And I love that. I love that because people don't believe in themselves, for anything. And it's crazy. I didn't realize until I got older how much my parents infused confidence in me, hardcore, just deep confidence, to the point where I'm like, "What do you mean you don't think you can do it? Of course you can do it." And they're like, "What? You don't, there's not a thing." And I was like, "I don't know. Name a thing. I feel like I could do it." I don't know. It just sort of built different, but I realized that was part of my superpower to help people come out of their shells, you know? And I wonder if that guy who was looking for you was a person who had also experienced something similar to you. And so because of that, he knew to look for you and
or
to make you feel
he was just coming out of the men's room at that time and just said it, one or the other.
I mean, either way, he was gentle and lovely in that moment.
That's right. I don't know that he really knows how much it's affected me, because he shortly after got married and had a kid and doesn't really do improv like he did at the time. But
Sure.
It's someone that's really affected me, and so. Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah, teaching is such an interesting thing, and I wish I'd had like a 101 teacher like you that was like, you can do it. Not that my 101 teacher was not great, but I am not someone who I think my parents tried to instill a lot of confidence in me, but I just think it's who I am, that there's always this self-doubt. I am the embodiment of imposter syndrome most of my days, and so I think that was also really an interesting piece to sort of connect on throughout the community. Like, I'm in a room with all these people. Why am I here? Like, I don't belong. And I was like, I feel that way, and I know so many other people feel that way. So that's why I really try being the key word. I mean, there's always hiccups and things we learn and things we can do better. But just to make it feel like this is a place you can be. We do a couple shows every month at Queen City that are just open to anybody. It doesn't matter what, you just sign up if you want to play, and you just come in and play. So you don't have to audition for a team. You don't have to commit to time. You don't have to learn a form or a structure. You just come in and play. And so it's like, that's just one of those things that's really important to me. So,
yeah, that's so great. I'm so glad that you are in the current position where you have the spaces to share, where you're, connected in your own community enough that you and the people that you work with have these spaces and can sort of be the for lack of a better word, matriarch and patriarchs of this like community, and say like, hello, come on in. We're here. We've been doing this for a little while. It's safe here. Pop in, like that, you're an experience builder. Like you said, you're like,
that was my title.
It's amazing.
I have a business card. I have a business card still with my name on there. Experience manager.
You should legit, by the way, save that and like laminate it and keep it, and then like make sure your grandkids get it. Now, the reason why I say so is because nobody knows anything about their grandparents, right? Like, they're like these vague secret creatures. Like, who knows what their life was like, right? My grandmother, there's this family story that she was a travel agent, but like, it wasn't during my lifetime. And the idea that she could be a travel agent sounds as insane, I suppose, as my mother being a kindergarten teacher. So I was just like, but then I found in some old stuff that was given to me that was hers, her business card that said her name and travel agent. And I was like, wow, she really was. Okay. Like,
I'm holding it in my hand.
This really happened, and it's this nice, pristine business card. And so I just put it in my wallet. So I just have it like somebody's business card, but it's my grandmother's. Like,
that's so amazing.
So wild. But like that, but experience. Can you imagine? Like, if I had a card from one of my grandparents that said experience builder, I'd be like, what sort of Disney Wild World is this? You know what also makes me think of? I made a reference earlier to the Gap people working there because I worked at the Gap in my 20s. And one of my favorite jobs that I didn't have, but people had at the store, was that there were the people who would like redesign the store overnight. So like I would close, we'd like finish and clean up our area. And then this crowd of like artistic looking people would come in, and I'd be like, man, I really wonder what they do. And then after a while I realized, because the next day I'd come in and be like, oh my God, it's a winter wonderland all of a sudden. Like, and they had just, their 8-hour shift was moving everything and creating these big, like sculptures and whatever design it was. And after time of working there, I met them and would be like, tell me everything about what you do. I want to know everything. And they'd show me the binders that they would receive each night. Yes. That was like what the brand wanted it to look like. And like, they had to be like, okay. And each one of us get assigned. And I worked at one of the biggest Gaps in New York City. Like, it had every different brand in it, which means this was a huge store to redecorate.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And their team, they'd be like, yeah, 2 of us go over there, 2 of us go over here. I'm like, what?
No, I get it. Imagine all of that with teddy bears and dolls. That was what I know it. So they would be like, I gotta set the dolls on skis. That teddy bear is gonna be a football player. So.
Oh my God. Do people buy you teddy bears as like gifts because they think they get it? Okay, because that would be terrible.
No. And it was funny, growing up, I collected stuffed animals, like hundreds of stuffed animals. I had like every stuffed animal since like the day I was born. And then as we were packing to move to Connecticut, my mother gave them all away intentionally. She said it was accidentally, but I found out years later that it was intentionally, because she was like, she's have too many of them and it's all cluttered. And she was just like, we were downsizing to a different size house, but she said, oh, it's an accident. I didn't mean for them to get that box. But I found that years later. It's not an accident.
Oh my God, it wasn't an accident, Mom. She never should have told you. That should have stayed a secret forever. Oh.
And then I ended up working at the Build-A-Bear workshop for 10 plus years. So.
Yeah, that's her fault. That was her. You could have worked at, Lord and Taylor, but no. You were working at the Build-A-Bear. That being said, fun. Like, and maybe it's not fun. Maybe it's not fun. And I get it. When you're in a place, it's
America. Yeah. So I ran the one at the Mall of America. So people would wait for like 3 hours to make a bear. So, it was interesting. That's why.
Yeah, I know. Interesting. No, anything with parents is interesting for sure. But, sometimes I think whenever I talk to people, 20 somethings who are like trying to find a job, I like to tell them, go work somewhere where you either want to buy the product and thusly can get a discount, or a place where you might learn something that you don't know how to do, whatever it might be. Those are the two things. Because who cares what if your day job isn't what you're meant to be or whatever. If you're a novelist or if you're an actor and you just need a job, well, great. Just then find something fun about it. And
I can sew up a teddy bear now, every part of their body. I can take heads off and put them back on dolls. I got some great skills. So.
That's some good skills. That's actually pretty great. That's awesome. Now I'm really worried that like inside your home, like everything's a nanny cam. Like it's like she just sews on. She got a camera sticking up in the eye.
I have 4 chihuahuas. Anything that's plush is destroyed. Speaking of, I can even show you like right here. It is like just destroyed stuffing coming out of it. I had to take it away from the dog so I didn't have to clean it up. Nothing plush lives in this house. So.
Oh my God. So your mom really won. Like in the largest sense. She's like, listen, someday you're going to have 4 dogs. I'm just trying to save you now.
That's it. Don't parents always win? Like, let's just be honest.
I mean, at the end of the day, they really do, for sure, for sure. If you're lucky enough to have a moment of reflection where you can see them for their, like, I remember the moment when I finally understood my mom's parenting. I was like, oh, okay. All right. I get it. Like,
yeah, and it's so powerful. And I just had the flip moment where I could see in my son's eyes where he realized, like, they're okay for the first time ever. So that was really powerful as well.
Oh, God.
I mean, he's 22. You got some time, Amy, but
maybe we don't know. Maybe he's 5, but he's pulling away. He'll be gone until 22. I gotta wait. How many years is that? 17 years for him to talk to me again. Oh boy, it's all right. I'll just call you for advice.
Yeah, feel free.
You're helping me with community, with improv, and also with being a mom.
Hey, being a parent is a whole nother community, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Being a parent is a whole nother community. Something you don't understand until you are one.
Absolutely. And it definitely involves a lot of the same sort of scenarios, like with any job or activity where when you first walk in, you're like, what are these people doing? I don't understand. Why would you ever? And then like a year into it, you're all like, you get it, right? This is why we do it. And you're like, I get it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We just yes and the baby. That's what we do.
Yeah. Oh man, I go to this mom's group like once every 2 weeks. It's like a mom support group. And like, it turns out now my child is a little bit older than all of the other moms. So I've decided that I'm there to like tell them it's going to be all right. Like they're going to get through this part. They're going to be able to go to the bathroom by themselves. You guys are going to be okay. I want you to know that. I know it feels like you're not, but you are. And they're like, thanks. It's like, I was there for a long time. I feel you. Like just different, you're at different points in the understanding. And so you can be like, I see how you're freaking out. You're all right. Don't worry. We all have each other's back in whatever way that we can, right?
Yeah. There's so much of improv, I think, corresponds into life. So there's so many skills that we can learn and use in our real life.
For sure. Definitely. All right. One last question and then I'll release you to the evening and your exciting lifestyle. I'm sure you're going to go party. Speaking of partying, what is the thing that you are doing for yourself? How are you creatively filling up your cup? You spend all of your life giving to other people, helping other people find their space. But what do you do for yourself to make sure you're creatively fulfilled?
Well, there's a couple things, I think. The first one is I am forever a student. I feel like as an educator, I have to keep learning something new. And I think every teacher that you work with, there's something you will take away from them that you can then share with others. So I think creatively for me, that's a big thing. Recently, I've begun with some of my folks I've been working with for a while, really, really digging into narrative improv, which was not something that I was really exposed to until the pandemic. I think it's such a big thing internationally. But, I sort of grew up in like a comedy sports type environment and some long form, which is like a Harold and Armando. So it wasn't really something that we explored. So that's really just the idea of playing in character for a really long time is really fun because it takes me back to like my musical theater days and stuff like that. And then personally, like I said, I have 4 Chihuahuas, and they keep me on my toes and keep me snuggled up, and entertained and frustrated and annoyed and happy. And they're like my children that love me unconditionally because my 22-year-old young man still loves me, but definitely not unconditionally. And then I'm obsessed with reality TV shows. I just feel like it's the greatest deconstruction of human beings and the greatest place to find characters and inspiration. And so I watch, I think, almost every single reality TV show except for all the Real Housewives. I watched like New York for a while, but that was about it. But yeah, so those are the things. I mean, I think watching other people be a hot mess fulfills me in ways that are probably sadistic, but that's the truth.
May I just say that reality TV plot lines is a format that I love mapping. You know how I talk about how I miss outline? Like, I love it. And I have such deep respect for editors of documentary shows or reality TV shows. I mean, I see you're watching like Housewives, right? I'm watching like Oak Island, old men digging holes, right? They make this old man digging a hole and finding something, the most exciting thing I've ever seen in my whole life. And they build it up. And then they're like, everyone's reaction. And they do like the face shot of every person. They're like,
And they've recorded all 5 cameras for 24 hours straight, and they have to go in and find those 2 minutes of things. It is a thankless job. I actually have a cousin in LA who's an editor. It is a thankless job, but it is why the entertainment industry is so important. And that's why editing is so hard for improvisers, because it's gotta be those moments that feel the right place to end something and start something new.
Oh, man. So wild. Yeah, well, gosh, I mean, I could go down a longer rabbit hole about why I think the improv brain and editing in this way are like 2 different like storytelling structure things, but I won't. I will hold that for later and let our brains chew on that for the next time. And then, I'll be calling you in a few weeks and be like, wait, I had this idea and I just was thinking, what do you think? Because I'll be thinking about that for a while. I love storylines and that whole thing. Thank your cousin who does the editing. Tell him to thank everyone, to just go to his job where he is and tell them there are a number of people who are just so excited for them. I am like, I want there to be a separate award show with a red carpet of those people.
They don't even get to be seen on the actual shows most of the time.
None, never.
So they get that special award ceremony the day before.
Like, I want there to be some sort of like red carpet meet cute with the guy who's the head editor of like Alone, and like and this person who's the editor of Naked and Afraid, and they're like, I love your work. Listen, do you want to go on a date? And they're like people are, on the red carpet. They're like, that's how they met. Can you believe it? Like,
we need a reality TV show of just editors. That's it. It's the editor reality TV show.
It's funny. Like, the worst part is, and even the editors would agree, really what needs to happen is a creative person needs to write a show about editors. And then we'll be interested in them, but we can leave the editors alone because they don't actually want to be on the screen or have anyone know about their lives.
With their headphones and their mouse and doing all the magic.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, no, I picked my career specifically.
I don't want to be in front of the camera. I'm
really great at organizing this, and thank you that you love it, but no thank you. Don't look at my life or who I'm dating. Oh man, so fun. So many different fun stuff. I love that the reality TV sent us down a wild rabbit hole. You have been so fun to talk to, Karla. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. I really appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation with me.
It's been my pleasure, and thank you for asking.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for listening to Yes But Why podcast. Check out all of our episodes on yesbutwhypodcast.com, or check out all the content on our network, HC Universal, at hcuniversalnetwork.com.